Today, you guys, we are going to be learning about J.P. Morgan, otherwise known as John Pierpont Morgan. And this is the graphic organizer that you are going to have to complete during the reading. I want you to really pay attention to what I'm saying because over the last two that you have done, you have been making consistent errors even with redirection from me, which means that either you're not listening to my instructions or you're not fully grasping how to fill out this organizer. So me going through it with you again, important to listen to so you know what's expected of you. My background here, this is what you're going to tell me what was his childhood like. Who were his influences throughout life? So when I look at his childhood, I want to know about what life was like for young Pierpont when he was a younger kid. What was life like for J.P. Morgan? As he started to get older and meeting more people, who were some of the people that had a big influence on him? Here we are now on character traits. These are when you use single words to describe this man. A lot of you are still giving me full sentences, and that's not what this organizer is asking you to do. It's challenging you a little bit to think about the man as a whole. Think about all the different sides of this man, and to give me words to describe him, single words. This is going to help you later on, especially when you get to your epitaph. My money. I want to know how he made it. Now again, I want to know how he made his fortune. What were the big things that he did? Yes, we all learn valuable lessons when we were younger, about money. But that's not how he made his fortune. How did he end up making his fortune? What was his big aha moment that made him the millionaire that he was? My money. How he used it. This is about how he spent his money. And all of these guys, let it be Rockefeller, Carnegie, or J.P. Morgan, spent their money in a variety of different ways. You want to be aware, listening for ways that they spent their money, and you want to list all those different ways here. My epitaph. This is what you would write on somebody's tombstone. So again, thinking about J.P. Morgan as a whole individual, I want you to give me one line that would sum up his life that you would write on his tombstone. It should be a very simple line. It's a statement. And really, a statement is about 5 words. So it has to be short and concise. So I'm going to read to you about powerful J.P. Morgan. And as I'm reading to you, I want you to follow along with me. You can take a moment, and after I'm done reading, you can go back and you can look at the images and you can read the caption on your own for all these different images you see throughout the article. There are so many myths about John Pierpont Morgan that we need to get a few things straight. He was not the richest man in America. People really just thought that he was. Rockefeller and Carnegie were richer. And he was not the most powerful man in America. There were 2 or 3 men who were equally powerful. But he was very rich and very powerful, and vain and arrogant too, which means that he was very sure of himself. He was like a regal lion who lords over the whole jungle, the jungle where he was king, the world of business and finance. Morgan was a banker, a money man, and he had the ability to take a confused situation and make it orderly. In the years after the Civil War, the American world of business was very disorderly. J. Pierpont Morgan helped make it efficient. Once the U.S. Treasury seemed on the edge of collapse, it didn't have enough gold in the reserve to meet its bills. J.P. Morgan loaned the nation, the United States of America, $62 million. Another time, the country was facing a financial crisis that might have led to a depression. For more about this, well, you don't have to see Chapter 10, because you'll learn about the Great Depression next year. People were pulling their money out of the banks and stock market. A leading trust company was about to collapse. If that happened, people would panic. Morgan called the country's leading financiers to a meeting in his own marble library building. He asked them to lend money to save the trust. Then he locked the library's doors. He sat and played solitaire while the bankers paced and argued. Solitaire is a card game that you basically play by yourself, and it takes a long time to win. Morgan had one of the world's great private art collections. Some magnificent art treasures hung on the library's walls. A Gutenberg Bible and a Thoreau's manuscripts sat on the shelves. Do you think the bankers enjoyed his treasures that night? No one knows the answer to that question, but we do know that at 5 in the morning, when the financiers agreed to do what he had wished, Morgan unlocked the doors and let them out. The country was saved from a financial disaster. Few people dared disagree with J.P. Morgan. He was dignified and very imposing. Besides that, he had integrity, which means that people trusted him, and he was a man of his word. Everyone knew that if Morgan gave his word, you could rely on it. A famous photograph shows him sitting in a chair, a hand gripping the armrest, eyes electric with energy. Meeting his blazing dark eyes, said the photographer, was like confronting the headlights of an express train bearing down on you. When the trustees of Harvard Medical School needed money to expand their school, they went to several rich men. Rockefeller, with his careful, methodical mind, told them it would take him 6 months to study their plans. Morgan listened to the Harvard representatives, looked at his watch. He was busy that day, pointed to their plans and said, I will build that, and that. Good morning, gentlemen, and he led them to the door. J.P. Morgan was not like Andrew Carnegie. He did not start as a poor boy and work his way to riches. He started at the top. His father was an international banker. The first Morgans arrived in Massachusetts in 1636. Miles Morgan, an early ancestor, moved from the rigid Puritan Boston to more tolerant Connecticut, and there acquired land, promise, and fame as an Indian fighter. By the time of the 19th century came around, the family was wealthy and snobbish about it too, which snobbish means that they were kind of stuck up. Young Pierpont usually got his way. He was smart with a talent for mathematics and languages. Once he disagreed with an answer in an arithmetic book. He claimed he was right and the book was wrong. Turned out, he was right. He had caught the book in a misprint. His mind was very orderly. He got a weekly allowance and kept record of every penny he spent. When he grew up, he did the same thing. He was sent to schools in the United States and Switzerland and Germany and became a well-educated man, interested in art and music. He was an imposing man, vain about his clothes and his looks. He lived in enormous homes. He had 7 of them, and he also owned a yacht and his own railroad cars. Morgan had one problem, a huge bulb-like nose that was often red as a strawberry. It was bad enough to be considered a medical problem, though no doctor was able to help. In the famous photograph of him, you'll see on the previous page, sitting in the chair with his blazing eyes, the photographer fixed the negative to shade the well-known nose. By the beginning years of the new century, the House of Morgan, that was the name of J.P. Morgan's bank, could be found in almost every important field of American business. It controlled railroads, shipping, the manufacture of agricultural tools, telephones, telegraphs, electrical power, insurance, and city transportation. Remember, it was J. Pierpont Morgan who bought Andrew Carnegie's steel company. Then he bought huge metal ore reserves from John D. Rockefeller, and he founded and created the U.S. Steel Corporation, which is still in existence today. It was the nation's first billion-dollar corporation. An American president looking at the country's business situation said, "The great monopoly in this country is the money monopoly." The president wasn't talking about the board game, although you do a lot of buying and selling when you do play Monopoly.